Hey, this is Zach Lug the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
Hola, yo soy Covido.
And with Travis as well.
Hello.
And we are getting together tonight to talk about G.K. Chesterton's poem Post-Recessional. As usual, quick note, if you like what I do, if you enjoy these videos, please consider supporting me via subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great.
Hyphen.
Yes. I am not, however, a hyphenated American. I'm with Mr. Roosevelt on that one. Anyway, now slightly out of our usual way of doing things. Chesterton's poem Post-Recessional is actually a reply to a poem Recessional by Rudyard Kipling. So, to give everyone the full context, we're going to read both of them tonight, and Nate and Travis have volunteered to do so. So I'm going to put Recessional up so everyone can follow along, and we will, and as soon as that is up, Nate will read that for us, and then we will switch to G.K. Chesterton's reply. Okay. And let me know when that's up.
It's up. All right, Recessional by Rudyard Kipling, 1897. God of our fathers, known of old, Lord of our far-flung battle line, beneath whose awful hand we hold dominion over palm and pine, Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. The tumult and the shouting dies, the captains and the kings depart. Still stands thine ancient sacrifice, an humble and a contrite heart. Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. Far called our navies melt away, on dune and headland sinks the fire. Lo, all our pomp of yesterday is one with Nineveh and Tyre. Judge of the nations, spare us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. If, drunk with sight of power we loose, wild tongues that have not thee in awe, such boastings as the Gentiles use, or lesser breeds without the law, Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. For heathen heart that puts her trust in reeking tube and iron shard, all valiant dust that builds on dust, and guarding calls not thee to guard, for frantic boast and foolish word, thy mercy on thy people, Lord.
Okay, thank you, Nate, and
Wait,
Travis.
there's more.
Wait, what?
But wait, there's more.
Oh.
Not only do you get one poem by a great poet, we have a second poem free of charge on subscribestar.com. Zachlog-the-great.
Okay. Travis.
Yes, I am ready.
Go ahead. You can see Post-Recessional here?
Yes, I see it on the screen.
Okay, go.
All right, Post-Recessional by G.K. Chesterton. God of your fathers known of old, for patience with man's swaggering line, he did not answer you when told about you and your palm and pine. Though you deployed your far-flung host and boasted that you did not boast. Though drunk with sight of power and blind, even as you bowed your head in awe, you kicked up both your heels behind, at lesser breeds without the law, lest they forget that yours was the exclusive set. We fancied heaven preferring much, your rowdiest song, your slangiest sentence, your honest banjo banged, to such very recessional repentance. Now if your native land be dear, whisper or shout, and we shall hear. Cut down, our navies melt away, from ode and war song fades the fire, we are a jolly sight today, too near to Sidon and to Tyre, to make it sound so very nice to offer ancient sacrifice. Rise up and bid the trumpets blow when it is gallant to be gay, tell the wide world it shall not know our face until we turn to bay. Bless you, you shall be shameless yet, for God forgives and men forget.
Okay. Wait, where is it? Here we go. All right. So I guess since I had both of you read, I should start off on this one. And first off, to put a little take a little humor in the situation. This kind of strikes me like a little bit like a rap battle between two people who are actually intelligent and articulate, um, and have more to talk about than the Hoes and the Benjamins. But
What? You're gardening with your best friend Benny. How's that a bad thing? I may not be up on my hip hop. I don't know.
Oh, that's funny.
But Chesterton actually has a whole set of these where he is replying to another poet. There's, I think, to Wordsworth and to Robert Browning and several others I can't recall off the top of my head. And it's a lot of fun he's a little bit of a jerk in these, but it's still funny. So
Chesty's clapbacks, huh?
yeah, it's there's like 7 or 8 of them.
So
I don't
Chesterton's pushing back on these other poets. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like some of them are more strictly humorous than others, and some of them I think he's kind of trying to make at least a little bit of a serious point, as he is with this one. But it's like I'm in a kind of odd position because I actually really like Recessional. I really like that poem. At the same time, I get to Chesterton's answer here, and I'm like, yeah, you got a point. So it's interesting. So Nate, since you covered Kipling's with me earlier, what do you think about the putting the two of them together?
If I'm going to go with either one of them, I'm probably going to go with Kipling. Now, I understand that lining up against Chesterton in what's going to become a theological debate can be a sketchy proposition, but I think he's a little too close to a pacifist in this one. I understand what he's saying. This whole, hey, maybe you ought to have thought of that before you spent all this time glorifying war and singing the praise of the empire. Maybe you should have been thinking about, God then. And I'm like, well, yes. But at the same time, are you saying that you never once were proud of the empire, Mr. Chesterton? Are you saying that, you've never looked with satisfaction on the power of the kingdom that, you were born under? I mean, look, guys, there is a lot to be said for, a peaceable kingdom, but they don't exist. Now, should you be going out rolling, rolling deep and building an empire? Nah. That's a little harder to say.
It was the thing to do at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a sin. It's not a sin. If it's a sin at all, it's definitely not one that is, shall I say, unique to Europeans and the British in particular. It's something that everyone has done when given the chance. And the British just turned out to be really, really good at it. But, and like I said, they saw it as a sort of, missionary by force proposition that, hey, it's like in the places we go, we bring the word of God and the light of civilization. People are like, well, that's paternalist. I'm like, yes, but don't you wish you had grown up with a dad?
Wait, say that again? I missed your last statement.
I said, people will say, well, that's paternalist and terrible. I'm like, well, come on, don't you wish you grew up with a dad, who taught you how to do things?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
And so it's like, I understand that, it feels a little mean, but honestly, I think the British Empire was a good thing. And I think that it did a lot more good than harm. Also made the British a lot of money and made them very powerful for a very long time. So, small flaw in the plan, but I don't feel like Kipling is so wrong that he deserves to be rebuked, because in the end, what Recessional is asking is that, hey, God help us to be reminded and to keep in mind that we could not have done all that we have done fighting against you, that without faith and belief in these, in the tenets of your law, we could never have spread so far and been so great. It wasn't just our reeking tubes and iron shards. It wasn't our artillery. It wasn't our shot and spall. It wasn't, the sword and the horse and the arm. It was all of those things put in service to the law of God. Now, and so let's not, don't let us think that, we're so awesome on our own. We require divine providence and protection. I think that's a decent take on it. But Chesterton disagrees. And so he calls it, basically throws down saying, hey, why don't you quit being a hypocrite then? And I'm like, well, you can't put the ink back in the pen, GK. Those poems were written before.
What was the year difference? I guess Recessional is 1897, and when was Chesterton's? Post-Recessional. It doesn't say on this thing I have here.
Yeah, I do not think I have.
He was active more in like the 20s, 30s, 40s.
This could have been. I mean, this could have been the early, like the 1900, like the 00s. We've never developed we've never developed a good name for those. It could have been that soon. I do not have good information on that right now. That is probably something I should have looked up before. So yeah, I don't know how close these are, but I mean, Chesterton and Kipling were to some extent contemporaries.
Okay.
I think Chesterton outlived Kipling by a little bit, but I don't think it's a huge gap. So Travis, what's your impression of the two?
So I mean, I guess to go off of what Nate was saying, I mean, Recessional, there is a call. I liked it because it was kind of a call for humility, and not forgetting, and yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say it is. I can't. Like, you have to credit Chesterton on this one point here, because it is, humility and, give thanks to God for what he has done for us. And at the same time, like in the second stanza here, though drunk with sight of power and blind, even as you bowed your head in awe, you kicked up both your heels behind at lesser breeds without the law. And it's like, even while you're talking about, humility and, bowing down before God, you're like, oh, well, we're better than those people over there. And he's like, yeah, Chesterton, you have a point there. At the same,
you think about it. You think about it this time, though. People think that a person's culture was developed directly as part of their breed, their breed confirmation almost. They treat it that the idea is that you behave as your largely as your genes will tell, and if you don't have an outside influence, your culture will develop along that line. Hence the disdain for primitive cultures. It's like, well, if y'all were if y'all were more evolved, if y'all had better breeding, y'all would not be so freaking primitive. And so again, looking back with our, future colored glasses, we can go, yeah, you know what? That's not so. But back in the day, everybody believed that. It was like, yeah, this is how it is. So, I mean, to blame him for that, I mean, maybe Chesterton was ahead of the curve on that one, but I don't really hold that so much against Kipling.
Well, the other thing for me, and this actually reminds me a little bit of a quote from G.K. Chesterton from an essay of his. There's in one of his books of essays. Oh, actually, okay. This essay was written in 1901. A defense of patriotism, in his book The Defendant. There's a quote from Chesterton. My country, right or wrong, is a thing that no patriot would think of saying. It is like saying my mother, drunk or sober. And I think he has a point. I think there is. I think that's a kind of reckless and possibly even dangerous attitude to have. At the same time, I can't help thinking like, okay, if you're facing off with another group of people, and they have that attitude, and like your people don't have any of that attitude, you're going to have problems. Like you have to have at least a little bit of that, like, well, they're my people. They may be wrong in this case, but they're my people, so I gotta stick with them a little bit. And like it's obvious you can go too far with that, but if you don't have any of that, you're kind of gonna get wiped out by people who do.
That is absolutely true. And the whole, the choice that you end up having to make sometimes between, do I go along with the foreigner whose cause may be just even in my own mind, or do I fight alongside, do I fight for hearth and home alongside my people, is a thorny issue. Look at Robert E. Lee. He really didn't particularly agree with a lot of things going on in the Confederacy. He wasn't an ardent pro-slavery person, but he was not about to fight against his people and his homeland of Virginia. And so he's like, not necessarily my my cup of tea, but I can't break those bonds. Ironic statement. Now I think about it. I don't know. I will say, between Chesterton and Kipling, I kind of side more with Kipling. But then again, I took this mustache directly off of the body of a Civil War general, so I still smell the gunpowder. To be honest, though, the guy I really agree with the most, and that kind of, when I was reading the poems, kind of put me smoothly in mind of, is Brain. Okay, I understand the babies have got you all tired and glitchy, but you should remember this name. No, it's not Arlie Army. What are you doing? Give me the right guy. Dang it. Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe, Sean. Who wrote that?
Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
God, for freaking jeez. Could not get my brain to go there. Anyway, C.S. Lewis, in some of his essays, I've been listening to readings of them, different sections of Mere Christianity and things like that. And a couple of them come to mind. One is his little dual set of why he is not a pacifist. And Post-Recessional seems to be tilting a lot ways toward pacifism, especially, cut down our navies melt away, from ode and war song fades the fire. We are a jolly sight today, too near the side man to tire.
Oh, gosh.
Tell the wide world to chill out, know our face until we turn to bay. Those things, I'm like, it sounds like he's saying that, yeah, you know what? Maybe don't do all this time, don't spend all this time fighting, give no glory to martial pursuits. And I'm like, yeah, but then you lose a lot that way. And so Lewis talks a lot about why he's not a pacifist, and he makes very, very good arguments, as he tends to. And then in his essay on chivalry, he speaks about, the best man is not, he's not entirely a warrior. He's not entirely, he's not entirely brash or entirely meek. He's both of them to the utmost when he needs to be. And so, and he actually calls out Kipling in that essay saying, it's hard to imagine, it's like a lot of Kipling's characters are very brave, but it's hard to imagine many of them being meek. And so, you run it, and yeah, I can agree with that to a bit. He's like, so, you don't want to do that. You go too far. But at the same time, talking about, pacifism and all that is like, hey, that's also too far. There comes a time when the claims that are held over you by other people and other groups are such that you must obey them, even if that means going to war. Sometimes the moral imperative requires that you fight. And so, what do you do?
That's why it's very hard to be brash and meek at all the right times. I mean,
it's very hard.
It's a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, there's actually so the last stanza there, like you said, and I may be misreading this. I may be misunderstanding this. But what is it? Tell the wide world it shall not know our face until we turn to bay. And how I kind of read that is like he's talking about issuing saying these kind of things when you're in a position of strength is a little. Give me a second. It's a little vainglorious. And when you should be saying these kind of things, when you should be like have this kind of bravado and braggadocio, is like tell the wide world it shall not know our face until we turn to bay. Like when you're cornered, when you're the low one down, then you turn and say, you know what, I'm not going down easy. This isn't. I'm gonna be a hard out. You might get me, but you're gonna hurt on the way. Bragging when you're cornered, when you're the like that. When you're the low one in the fight, there's a kind of courage to talking that way. But when you're in the top position, it's kind of braggadocio. It's kind of immature, I guess. I don't know. Travis, what did you think? What did you think about any of this?
Oh, I don't know. It may all be too deep for me.
Oh, come on. We're three random guys on the internet getting together and talking about poetry. We can solve all the world's problems.
Sure.
There's nothing beyond us.
I've only got enough ammo to solve several dozen.
Well, I guess sort of what we're talking about is, you got humility and you got pride and you've got power. And they're talking about how, the English are asserting their power.
Well, and at the same time, though, the there's definitely some of that in Recessional, but there's also there's a very regretful, very kind of painful aspect to that, and I think Kipling, had some idea of what was going to come for England. Um, and that's one thing I've seen a few people talk about. Like historically, the nations that conquer and lead an empire, like those people, that country, it doesn't tend to go well for them after. And there's always an after. It doesn't matter how much you conquer, it doesn't matter how great you are, there's always an after. And it's usually not very good for the people who were up at the top there for a while. And I think Kipling was had some idea of that coming. And you know England isn't, I mean, just this past few years they've been trying to break their way free of the European Union, and trying to basically have their own Independence Day. What is it?
That is interesting. I never thought about that.
What was it? England. Oh, England, the greatest exporter of Independence Days in the world.
Well, hey, look at it this way. If they decide it needs to be fought, at least they don't have to ask the French for a navy. They can be like, excuse me, son. Yeah, Pop. Charlie, I could use some of those ships, huh? Good job being the world's naval hegemon, by the way. Keeping up the old family traditions. Yes, sir. So, blockading the Europeans then? Absolutely. All right. I mean, we can do that with computers, not necessarily aircraft carriers, but we'll do both.
What was
While we're at it, we'll call the Russians and be like, hey, we're turning our backs for 5 years. Go.
Well, I mean, I was talking with a friend, and I think it holds true in business as well. Like, most businesses do not make it past 3 generations. I mean, lots of them don't make it that long, but even the ones that get big and do really well, either, the nature of the markets change, competition changes, things change, but part of it is that you get further away from the people that had the original vision and drive to make it happen. I think that's what happens in family business. So there is, I think, in the nature of power, I think there's just sort of this thing. You build power, and then you can't build power anymore. So the only place to go is down. And then that creates a space for other smaller powers to take power and grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the magic or the formulas are in that, but it does seem to be an element.
Well, apparently the Greeks had this notion that governments were cyclical. You went from sort of chaos to the strongman, to the oligarchy, to the democracy, to the chaos, to the strongman, to the oligarchy, to the democracy.
Was it Aristotle?
And you just sort of, I think so. I don't remember.
I think Aristotle talked about that progression.
He was a Greek. But, and so, yeah, that's sort of the sort of grist of time going on. Interestingly, Roman Emperor Hadrian, he of the wall there in Britain, actually built that, I think, with sort of this whole idea in mind, is that an empire should have limits. Because if you spread too far, you spread too thin, and then you can't stop the blow. And so it's like, okay. So it's like, we shouldn't go any further than this. Further Roman emperors are like, nah, that's stupid. We should definitely, oh God, it's really hard to go north of there, isn't it? Yeah.
So north of there was the Scots. Is that correct? Well, I mean, the ancestors of today's Scots. Yeah.
More or less.
I'm pretty
There's
sure
a bunch
I
of
have
blue dudes up there.
I'm pretty sure I have at least a little bit of that blood. So yes, I suppose I should take some pride in being one of the people who the Romans said, "No, you're fine. You stay there. We're not bothering you."
Well, you know how it goes.
What was the progression again? Chaos, oligarchy.
Chaos, strongman, oligarchy, democracy, chaos.
Okay. So strongman, then oligarchy.
What was one other thing, that really struck me, from this poem and from Chesterton's, reply, and kind of hurt. What is it? The next to last stanza there. We are a jolly sight today, too near to Sidon and to Tyre, to make it sound so very nice, to offer ancient sacrifice. And Sidon and Tyre, I'm pretty sure he's talking about Baal and Moloch. And the ancient sacrifice to Baal and Moloch was your babies. And I'm like, well, for the past 5 decades, America's had quite a bit of that kind of sacrifice. I'd rather not think about this right now.
Well,
and it's like, yeah,
to be fair, there's a lot greener of a Moloch now because he's not using fire anymore, so it's not letting loose all those freaking greenhouse gases.
And it's and I look at abortion among other things, and I'm like, I think I appeal to God to protect our country, to guide us, to thwart the evil people who are attempting to seize power, for instance. At the same time, though, like, if God said, "I'm sorry, but looks to me like America is due for judgment," I really couldn't argue with him much. Be like, yeah.
Well, to be fair, if God says it, you really can't argue with him much, no matter what you think.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's the lesson of Job. One of my favorite parts of the Bible is in Job, where Job finally was like, you know what, God, you come down here, you answer me, and God shows up. Just, yeah, what's up, Job? What do you know about anything? Who are you? Do you understand? Do you understand the stars? Do you understand how things work? No, you don't. Where were you when they were created? Nowhere. Where were you when I poured out the seas? Nowhere. Where were you when I raised the mountains? Nowhere. Tell you what, hang on. Check out my dog. He's awesome. This is my dog, Behemoth. He's great. Can you tame him? No, you go near him, he will crush you to paste. What about my little fishy Leviathan? He would eat you and all your homeboys. He would tump your Piro over and snack on you. Get out of my face, Job. It's like, do you understand what I'm telling you? And Job was like, uh-huh.
At the same time, God did say that, of all the people involved there, because it was like Job and 3 of his friends.
And his wife and 3 of his homeboys.
And I feel like there was a 4th friend of his that arrived later. I could be wrong about that. But, okay, it was like Job and 3 of his friends talking this whole time. And all of his friends are like, look, Job, you did wrong. You have to repent. And Job's like, what did I do wrong? Someone tell me. I have striven to be a good man. I don't think this is, judgment. I want an answer from God. And, God does say, look, I'm God here. You're not. At the same time, God also says, by the way, of all of you people here, Job is the one who talked righteously about me. Job is the one who was honest. He asked questions, and I'm fine with that. He didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't curse God. He didn't turn away. He just said, "Why? What's happening here? Why? I want some kind of answer." And God's answer included, "You're not going to understand," but God's answer also included, "Yes, you can ask."
Mm-hmm. And that is an important thing to realize too. It's not that Job was wrong for asking. It's that it's just funny. He got mad. And finally, he's like, "God, I need you to come here and talk." And God was like, "I'm here. Let me talk." And I was like, can you imagine the sort of like, oh, oh no.
See, but I feel like
happened?
Job may have needed a little more brashness in that moment, because I've thought about that whole passage. Because to me, I mean, I'm doing some suffering, and I'm kind of like, okay, if that's God's response to, come on, help me out, is like, hey, I'm God, I'm big shit, and I made the world. What I love is that God asks, where were you when I made the world? So my response is, well, I wasn't there, God, so why don't you show up right now, here today, and make me believe, with some expletives included. Because I wasn't there.
Well,
so
the
why
thing
should
about
I
it
believe
is,
why should I believe in your power and your might if I am not seeing it in my life today? Just stop talking to me about your power unless you're going to show me. That's where I'm at.
okay. Well, and
I think
question
Job
about that is, and the reason that God's answer to Job is proper is that he was explaining to him, it's like, you don't understand and you won't understand why I did this. But you have to trust in me, that what I am doing is right and just, and that my power is ultimate. And so it wasn't, he just didn't come down and say, no, you wouldn't get it. He said, you wouldn't get it because I am too great. And my scope and sort of the level of detail, first, the vastness of my scope is too much for you to comprehend. And then the fineness of the detail that I see, even within all of that, is too much for you to comprehend. So you can't understand the workings of the universe in their totality. And at the same time, you can't understand the very smallest things going on in the things you can see and understand. You still don't understand them to their very core level. I do. And so, man, I can tell you, I've been going through some suffering myself. So Zach Log here. The hardest part is trusting that, no, you know what? God will live up to his promise and work this out to my good. God's power is working. I may not understand how. And honestly, the hardest thing to accept sometimes is that maybe my suffering wasn't for me. Maybe my suffering was to show an example to someone else. But ultimately, like I said, ultimately it would be cathartic, and it would be really nice sometimes to have God just, come down there and thunder down from heaven and just say that, you know what? Here's the deal. But I think the reason we get the story of Job is so that we understand that even if he answered, we wouldn't get it.
Well, and another thing, though, I would say that, give me a second. Like if you are asking, if you're asking, why did God allow this to happen? I suspect, in fact, I'm pretty sure that if you could see things if we could see, things, the way
I don't even care why. I just want it to end. That's the thing. I'm not asking why. I'm just saying this needs to end.
Well, that's
I will
fair.
See, I will say about that. I don't know. I don't know who said this. I should see if I could find the source of the quote. But like human beings can endure almost any how, as long as they have a why. And we can persevere through all kinds of suffering. We can persevere through all kinds of what's the word I'm looking for? Deprivation.
Suffering, deprivation, misery.
We can keep going through
Depression, stress, pain.
Through like terrible things, as long as we can make sense of it, as long as we can see some kind of reason. And so I think, and maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, Travis, but I suspect that why is a lot bigger deal than like you're kind of saying there, if that makes sense.
No. At this point, it's not. The reality is, I want what I want. I mean, that's the whole broken down scenario. I want what I want, and I'm not getting it. So there's no why. I don't care why I'm not getting it. I mean, Nate's screaming twins in the middle of the night. They want what they want. It's not complicated. They're not asking, why aren't you giving it to me? They're just screaming until either Nate or his wife or both of them come in to feed them. And I'm screaming my head off, and I'm not getting what I want.
Well, what I would challenge you with is this. In this case, the infants can scream because they're infants, but if my 6-year-old screams at me in the middle of the night, he had better damn well know what he wants, and he had better be ready to hear no or to explain himself. Ultimately, screaming is the base level, and just raising the cry of pain. Yeah, you get attention, but ultimately, what you want might not be the best thing, or it might not be the time for it. I mean, my sons, they'll come up to me in the middle of the night and ask me for a candy cane or something. I'm like, no, you need to be in bed. What I would say, and I'm not trying to trivialize you, man. Believe me, I have been in your shoes. I've worn those shoes straight out the bottom. All right, I had the laces tied around my arch, and that was the whole shoe left. But what I've always had to do, and where peace came from, and where where I found both the will to go on and the way to go on, is that I had to bend the knee. I had to, instead of worry about how much I was hurt, I had to instead do what God is encouraging Job to do, and consider the greatness of God and worship him, and to praise, and to, with teeth clenched and fury, and just bloodshot fury in my eyes, knuckles popping, sing Amazing Grace until I meant it, until I could remember that, hey, you know what? It's not God that needs me. He would love to have me around. He loves me. He wants my relationship.
Why did he make me if he doesn't need me around?
Because.
Why did he make me for this suffering if he doesn't need me at all?
To be fair, God did not make us for suffering. God made us for relationship and joy. And he didn't need us. God needs nothing. But he thought that, and this is me going back to Lewis, is that apparently what we must accept is that he valued love enough to take the risk, at least from our point of view, the risk. He knew this would happen. But, he thought it was worth the suffering that would come and the pain, even in his own heart, to be able to have this relationship and to be able to give love and to receive it freely. And so, man, that's the whole reason why God did it, is because he wanted to. He thought it was worth it. And he knew, even coming in, that most of us would fall away and be lost, but the ones that could be saved and the ones that could know him were worth the pain. And not just the pain to himself, not the pain to any one of it, but they were worth the existence of pain. And so, honestly, I find that kind of awesome. And sort of the actual literal sense of the word too, not like, like skateboarder awesome, but it is something that is filled. It is filled with awe. It is actually legitimately. It gives me awe to think. And man, we're coming up to Christmas, and Christmas is the time where I encourage people to think about the best word in the Bible, which is Emmanuel. God is with us. And it's one of those sentences you can say and emphasize every different word and reach a whole new humbling realization that God is with us, right? Yahweh of the ancient times, creator of the universe, the self-existent one, I am, is with us. A bunch of yokels talking about poetry on the internet. God is with us. It's not that God was with us and he left. It's not that God is going to be with us sometime, but we're without him now trying to fight along our own power. No, God is with us right now. God is with us. Not, the whole saying God is in his heaven and the king is far away. No, God is right here on earth among us. If you've allowed him in, if you've given up lordship of your life, if you've accepted Jesus' sacrifice and the authority and the life of God, then he's with you everywhere you go. He lives in you. You breathe his breath. And so God is with us. He knows. He sees every day. He sees every challenge. He counts every tear, and he knows. He knows better than we do most of the time what we're upset about. And I think my favorite part is God is with us. Okay. I have a hard time believing that sometimes that I'm a worthwhile human being. I have a very intimate knowledge of my own flaws. And I feel like a lot of the times the people that think that I'm a decent person have fallen for a charade because I know what my instincts are. I know that in any given moment, I am pushed to take advantage. I am pushed to deceive. I am pushed to attack, to hurt, to betray. All of those things. But I've been given a different way to be. So I feel like, I'm just pretending. I'm pretending to be, the kind of person that Jesus was. And I even suck at the pretending part. But I feel like I'm deceiving people into thinking that I'm something that I'm not, which is all right. But God is with me. God is with us fallen, broken beings who are so very quick and willing to deceive ourselves and others, to rush to hurt in the name of pleasure, to dodge our duty, to drop our responsibilities when they get hard. God is still with us. God is with us. And that is just the most comforting thing sometimes. And I hope it helps you. I know it helps me. And hey, listeners, I have been sermonizing my face off. I hope it helps you too. And if you're an atheist, well, try not doing that anymore. It'll make your life better. But that's like I said, that's been how I've gotten through my tough times. And these last couple of years, I have been sort of chewing that message a lot.
Well, thanks for sharing that. To take it back to the poem a little bit, I don't know. Like, I think the different, like these two poems, recessional and post-recessional, it's sort of a sense that for Kipling, he recognizes that there's bad that comes with their empire, and he's he's asking for. I don't know. It's like I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's kind of that. I mean, the whole idea of an empire is we take what we want. Basically, it's there. I think I'd like to have it, and we go do that. And I guess you could say that's the brashness that we talked about earlier. I don't know. It's that challenge between what I want and, you're talking about what's best or God knows best or whatever in that context that you're sharing. There's pushback against what we want. I mean, the natives fighting against the British whenever they went there was pushback against what they wanted. But also, I think in many ways for the Spanish and the British too, there was the story of God and taking God to these godless natives, but I think that was as much a story to sell the endeavor as anything.
I mean, at the same
time, it was a tertiary concern at best.
You can say a lot against how the Spanish and the English colonized the Americas. At the same time, though, when Europeans got here, the Aztecs were running a pretty big chunk of Central America, and they weren't the nicest people in the world. In fact, I think it's probably safe to say that at their worst, the Spanish were noticeably better than the Aztecs had been to their neighbors. So, what was what was I going to say?
What I would say is that yes, I feel like the factors, the desires that went into the founding of these empires were, like I said, God was an off-sided one, but he probably wasn't the in the top two. Maybe out on the podium, like that's spreading.
Well, I think it's like anything. I think it's like
the word. I think spreading the word of Jesus was a bit far down the list. It's like, oh yeah, we can do that while we're here.
I just realized I was trying to remember. There was something I want to say a minute ago, and I was chuckling a little bit because I probably just earlier today I was listening to what is it? The song "Rourke's Drift," which is about one of the which is a song by Sabaton. I've brought them up a few times before about a battle between English colonial forces and Zulus in Africa, and it's a fun song, and I suspect it will not be too much longer before YouTube decides that they don't feel like hosting that anymore. It's very very politically incorrect scenario, but well, I feel like I've said most of what I wanted to say about the poem. Nate, did you have any?
I said everything I wanted to say about the poem and a bunch of stuff I didn't expect to talk about tonight.
On my part, I don't know. I feel like we didn't talk about the poem that much, honestly.
It wasn't. I mean, there was nothing about it.
Broad strokes, but we didn't really get in there.
It's not too much. That's not too much off the usual, though.
All right. Well, in that case, thank you both for joining me tonight, and God be with you.
Also with you.